It was August 2020. Stephanie Blais and her young family decided to go away for a few days. They left their home in the town of Edam in Saskatchewan, Canada, and headed north towards Buffalo Narrows. Stephanie's father owned a small wooden cabin in a remote area of wilderness. The family had been there many times before, and it was the perfect hideout to get away from the stresses of everyday life. Saskatchewan is covered largely by forests to the north and prairies to the south. It is home to a wide variety of wildlife, including bears. There are an estimated 60 to 70,000 black bears in this area of Canada alone. At the time of Stephanie's visit to the area, the world was gripped by COVID lockdowns. Bear hunters typically kill around 2,000 bears each season in Saskatchewan. With bear hunting off the table during lockdown, local residents noticed a significant increase in bear activity in the area. Perhaps the increased sightings were due to less human activity in the area, making bears become bolder in the absence of humans. Stephanie, her husband Curtis, and two children, Ellie, 9, and Uma, 2, were enjoying their adventure in the wilderness. Stephanie had a thirst for adventure and seeing the world. Throughout her life, she had visited 37 different countries. She had taught in schools in Taiwan and Kuwait, lived in a mission in Guatemala, and worked at the United Nations in Geneva. The 44-year-old showed no signs of slowing down her adventurous lifestyle and was keen to pass her sense for adventure on to her children. Stephanie, Curtis, and their children frequently visited the cabin that they shared with the rest of the family. Stephanie's father had been staying there only a week before their visit. The cabin was situated 150 kilometers north of Buffalo Narrows. It had been built in a woodland clearing on the shores of the beautiful and tranquil Mackay Lake. Stephanie loved looking out over the still water whilst the two children ran around the woods. They chopped wood for fire, cooked in an open stove, and fished in the lake. Occasionally, they heard the haunting call of loons on the water and spotted caribou, wolves, and deer by the shores. They also saw black bears in the area. They were well versed about bear safety and had seen them many times from the cabin. They knew they needed to lock food away and knew what to do in an encounter. When they spotted them from the cabin, the bears would usually run away or walk by without showing any interest in the people or the cabin. Curtis always carried bear spray and a gun for safety, but they had only ever encountered shy bears before. When they arrived at the cabin on the first day of their visit, Curtis found that the water pump wasn't working. Ellie and Uma played by her feet whilst she dialed her father's number. But when her father, Escriol, answered, the line was crackling. Stephanie couldn't hear him properly, and so she walked a little further from the cabin to try and find a better signal. She headed towards the lake and away from the trees. Her two children followed her while she began chatting to her father. She let him know that they had arrived safely and was about to tell him about the faulty water pump when the line crackled again. She couldn't quite hear what he was saying as every other word was cutting out. Stephanie held the phone up in the air and waved it around a little. She asked Ellie to go inside the cabin to fetch the antennae for the phone. Those are the last words Escriol ever heard his daughter say. Ellie dutifully ran off to the cabin and his little sister Uma trotted after him. Stephanie didn't see the huge figure approaching. She didn't hear the snap of a twig or rustle of leaves. She didn't notice the predator heading her way. Her head was slightly down as she scuffed the muddy ground and pressed the phone tightly to one ear whilst shielding the other ear. Rushing out from the trees, the large animal came barreling towards her. Stephanie didn't stand a chance. She didn't see anything as her back was turned to the woods. Suddenly, and without warning, something black launched itself at her from behind. The force sent her crashing to the ground. The wind was knocked from her lungs. She felt an agonizing crunch as a black bear bit into her face. The satellite phone went flying from her hand and landed on the ground. Stephanie's father could hear a commotion. Amongst the crackles of the poor line, he could hear a distant growling and a terrible gurgling noise. Stephanie's neck had been torn open. Escrial called out again and again, but he got no response. The growling and gurgling noises stopped and there was silence. He hung up the phone. The thought of a bear attack briefly crossed his mind, but they were so rare in the area that he dismissed it. When he tried calling back, he couldn't get through. During the attack, Stephanie's young children were inside the cabin. Her 9-year-old son, Ellie, had heard a commotion just as he had stepped inside the door. He looked back outside and screamed. He saw a large black bear on top of his mother. Its head thrashed from side to side as it mauled her face and neck. He screamed to his dad. Curtis came running. He grabbed the bear spray and shotgun. He released the bear spray canister as he ran towards the bear, but the spray did nothing. The bear was too engrossed in the kill. It didn't flinch. In fact, the spray seemed to enrage it further. It didn't stop its attack and continued to maul Stephanie on the ground. Curtis lifted his shotgun and shot the bear twice. The 2 shots rang out over the lake and echoed through the woodland. The bear was dead. Ellie and Uma came running outside. Curtis knelt beside Stephanie and grabbed hold of her shoulders. He gently shook her, desperately trying to wake her up, but she didn't respond. He felt her wrist and her neck. He couldn't feel a pulse. He began mouth-to-mouth and chest compressions whilst their children looked on tearfully. But, tragically, Curtis couldn't bring Stephanie back. He called Stephanie's father and told him the terrible news. Stephanie's father then called his friend, who was a seaplane operator in the area, and the pilot flew in to collect Stephanie. She was flown to Buffalo Narrows Hospital, where she was pronounced dead on arrival. Wildlife officers investigated the scene. It was a completely unprovoked attack. The bear responsible was an older black male. The bear was not hungry and did not have any young with it. Its stomach was full of berries, and it attacked Stephanie from behind. She hadn't seen it approaching, and her actions were unlikely to have provoked it in any way. She wasn't carrying any food on her, and she wouldn't have startled it by standing in the position that she was. The bear attack on Stephanie was the first fatal attack in the province since 1983. Escrial, who heard Stephanie's final words and the haunting final gurgles as her life slipped away, has spoken bravely of the incident.
She said to her son, who is 9, go to the house and get the antenna for the phone so we can get a better reception. And that was the last words that I heard from her. The next noise was, we now know there was a noise of the bear attacking her.
He said that as tragic as the outcome was, it could have been even worse. The 2 young children were playing by Stephanie's side less than a minute before the attack. The bear would have seen them as it made its way over to Stephanie. It could have easily killed the 2 children as well. Despite the terrible events, Escrial still visits the cabin in the woods. He still takes the family there as he wants them to remember the good times and the adventures they have in the wilderness. He wants them to remember their mother and the place where she was happy. She had once said that spending time with her family, especially her 2 children, was the biggest blessing in her life. Thankfully, they too didn't meet their terrifying final affliction.